to Building Toronto's Skyline, a podcast exploring the current state of Toronto's condominium industry from a unique construction perspective through engaging and entertaining podcast interviews with the many stakeholders in the industry. This podcast is brought to you by Fusion Corp, a construction management company. Here's the founder and CEO of Fusion Corp Developments, Inc., and author of Building Toronto's Skyline and Battle of the Skyscrapers, the host of this podcast, Nick Ainis.
Yo, 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 yo.
Nick, how you doing, buddy?
Just as good as I am ever.
What kind of watch do you wear? Every time we record, I see your watch, and I think I would like a watch like that. What is that watch?
You really want to know?
Yeah, I want to know.
Okay, it's an Omega Seamaster.
That sounds like it cost more than the family car here.
We're not going to get into that.
Okay, well, later I want to talk to you about where you get a deal on a watch like that.
Well, first of all, you have to love watches. So if you don't love watches, then forget about it.
Okay, well, my watch...
If you have an Apple Watch, I used to have an Apple Watch too.
It's a Garmin, to be honest, because I'm an Android man myself. Hey, do you spend time, when you're in Toronto, do you spend like a nice summer evening down to your harbor front on the waterfront?
I love it there, yeah. I had, I guess, when I was dating my future wife, we spent an amazing time on the waterfront and had a nice it was a hot summer day, and we had some cold beer on the waterfront and did a tour of the Toronto Islands. I actually did that on my one of my birthdays as well. I did a tour of Lake Ontario.
Amazing.
Hit the harbor, hit Toronto Islands. It's really, actually, getting out to Toronto Islands is amazing, actually.
It's a
beautiful experience. It feels like you're somewhere else, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's like a gem, like a Toronto, great city, lots to do in Toronto, but that waterfront, that's a true gem.
It is. And it can be, I'm sure it's going to be amazing. And I guess we have a great guest here today. Tim, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Nick.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a lot about what the amazing vision for Toronto's waterfront and what's coming down the pipeline. And I know you're a big proponent of that. And I guess that's the subject of today, Mike.
Yeah, we got Tim from the Waterfront BIA.
Exactly. So, Tim, can you why don't you start off by introducing us, you to us and to the audience, and tell us a little bit about your background, and let's start with that.
Thanks. Yeah, like I guess we always have to sort of clarify when we start out that the waterfront business improvement area, we're actually one of the smaller stakeholders on the waterfront, but in a way we're the one that's most focused on just Queens Quay and the central waterfront as a holistic entity. It's really just a one street BIA, but with the pretty significant development, especially on the eastern waterfront, we now have probably some of the most interesting projects to work on for any neighborhood in the city. And just as a kind of background, I mean, the mandate of a BIA is to support economic development in their neighborhood. The city has 85 plus BIAs now, but in our neighborhood, we typically say that means we want to support the development of Queens Quay and the entire waterfront in Toronto as a premier destination that's known around the entire world. It might not be there yet, but it certainly has the potential to get there. Some components of it probably already are there. And we also get involved in projects like we always say we want to be well connected to the rest of the waterfront. So that means transit. It means things like wayfinding and signage more locally. Mm-hmm. We're advocates for that. And we want the place to be clean, vibrant, and exciting all year round. So we actually do have some fairly small but very impactful cleaning programs to make sure things like graffiti and stickers and things are removed. We don't even complain to the city about it. We just do it ourselves. Then we also sponsor or support a lot of events. But I think most importantly, we also have a bit of a role as I call it a gap filling organization, where there's a lot of major stakeholders doing extremely exciting projects here. Like, I have to be clear, like there's the city of Toronto touched on a number of things. You mentioned Toronto Islands, which is certainly one of their greatest parks. There's Waterfront Toronto, massive urban development corporation on behalf of all three levels of government, developing significant amounts of new housing and enabling infrastructure now into the Portlands, where they've effectively built a new island to make sure they can build 150,000 new housing units. Well, housing for that many at least.
Yep.
And then there's Harbourfront Center, like a major, this great arts, culture, and recreation hub that's smack in the middle of the waterfront. It's been here for 50 years already. But that's like an entity that we hope will effectively grow, not just on their own site, but as a programmer of more of the waterfront over time. And so there's all these great stakeholders, plus even things like the Bentway, we consider kind of waterfront adjacent because they want to improve under the highway. And we, of course, want it to be nicer to get under that highway when you're walking to the waterfront. So
I
we
saw
have a
that.
lot of fun partners to work with.
So tell us a little bit about your background, because I did a little research on you on LinkedIn, and you have a pretty diverse diverse background. So how did you get into this role?
Well, yeah, I guess I always say the quick Coles notes is that in my 20s, I did about 10 different things. My master's degree was in journalism. I'd also worked in as a line cook at a truck stop restaurant.
I saw that
I did
too.
quality control and health and safety and assembling in factories.
Yeah.
I just kind of did interesting jobs that came up or that paid well. I taught English in Korea, but one interesting thing that happened where I was lucky, where I met someone who just happened to be hired to look into starting a BIA for the financial district in Toronto, where they didn't have a BIA. They were sort of a donut hole that didn't really fit into the other BIAs downtown. And so I just kind of got a job by accident, didn't even know what a BIA was, because I was helping out a friend as a writer. He liked me writing memos, and then I started writing minutes, then I started writing reports and proposals, and all of a sudden I had a full-time job because this new BIA had formed in the finance district. I sort of fell into a role as communications there, but what that effectively meant was more policy and advocacy, where there were a number of planning and tax and policy issues where the financial district BIA was looking to kind of elevate the certain issues. And so that's actually kind of how I got the job here. This exciting opportunity came up to work at the Waterfront BIA,
Awesome.
where they were quite strong in events. My predecessor was very strong in events. And but I was sort of hired to, I was like, keep doing the good events, but let's get into policy and planning. And the most important thing here, Nick, when I got this job was that the Eastern Waterfront, east of Yonge, was not in the Waterfront BIA.
Yeah.
So I spent about a year and a half leading into the pandemic trying to convince the Eastern Waterfront stakeholders to join with our BIA and have one BIA representing the entire Queens.
Were they a separate BIA at that time?
No, there was no BIA on the Eastern Waterfront. Like there wasn't a lot there yet. I mean, if you go back 7 years when I started, the Chorus building was fully built. I guess One Yonge was east of Yonge Street, the actual Toronto Star building. But a lot of the other buildings were still under construction. There was not, there's a couple new office buildings that are very large.
Nice.
They weren't necessarily open yet.
So
luckily we were successful in convincing everyone to work together on the waterfront, basically.
So you managed to get into that role. That's fantastic. Congratulations. And I have in my family, actually, my uncle was president of the New Toronto's Business Improvement Area. So he was a BIA president at that time, and so I know a little bit about it because of his role where he was advocating for businesses in New Toronto at the time. New Toronto isn't obviously Toronto's waterfront, but he was pro-development for the community. He didn't actually get what he wanted, but at the end of the day, New Toronto's starting to come along. It's slowly coming along. Mike lives in New Toronto, as you know, and it's very exciting, and you're there to support all those businesses, obviously, and the bottom line, that's your role there, and make it a destination place for everybody in Toronto and people visiting from Canada and all over the world. And so we're really excited to talk to you today about all the initiatives happening here. One thing we want to hear about the spa in Ontario Place. That's going to be a topic that we're going to do. Yeah. Come on, you have to talk to about us. So tell us a little bit about, now that we know how you got into it, how did you get that amalgamation happening? So did you visit a lot of businesses there, and how do you get more? How do you expand that BIA portion on the Eastern Waterfront?
A bit of a fun story that ends up getting into what our priorities are now. I mean, I guess the answer is I went on a bit of a listening tour. I went and talked to some of the new developments and developers, talked to some of the existing businesses that were there, talked to people like Waterfront Toronto and stakeholders at the city. Like, what could a BIA be helpful in this neighborhood? And where it quickly got to was the Waterfront East LRT. It's still not funded and built. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately now it is still not funded and built, but it appears to be on track to be getting funded and built over the next few years. And that was where the city has a streetcar going south from Union Station and then west through the Harbourfront Centre past the Island Airport to Exhibition Place, but still doesn't have one to the east. So where you've got even significantly higher density of housing and new office and everything leading into the Portlands, that was the biggest priority. And so we got very active on that file really quickly. We prepared an economic impact study with an engineering firm named Hatch just to get the information out there about the pretty obvious economic uplift of basically if the governments invest in this new transit line, you'll get your money back pretty quickly. Like it's not just the right thing to do to build that public transit, but it makes sense. It would be the fastest CTC line to ever pay for itself, basically. So we just became a very public advocate on files like that unfortunately needed public advocacy. Because that's what when I started, it was the time of Sidewalk Labs was the big proposal on the Eastern Waterfront. That was what was in the news a lot. And they actually were looking for a way to get into kind of talking about transit as well. So they were actually one of the stakeholders that supported us expanding at the time.
Oh, sounds
And
amazing.
then just to let you know, some other priorities. I mean, the BIA, when I started also, there was things like we had a bit of room to grow in social media. So we now actually 2 of our 6 full-time people are effectively doing social media and posting blogs on the website and promoting the neighborhood, because for some of the smaller businesses, that's the most effective thing we can do on a day-to-day or a month-to-month basis is promote them through a bigger channel than they might be able to reach through their own marketing and their own marketing budgets. And then another project that you might want to get into talking about is the underpasses. The BIA, our board, they talked a lot about improving the north-south connections, they called it. And that meant as you walk under this, as you're trying to get to this increasingly beautiful waterfront with new parks, it seems every 2 or 3 years, you have to go under a dirty old highway. And we're not getting rid of the highway, we know that. So how can you improve it? And luckily there was already a bit of a benchmark there. I mean, the Bentway was just getting started. When I started, they have the skating rink kind of the highway, and they do beautification and art projects. And so we didn't actually work with them yet, but what we did is we worked with the designer who'd come up with the Bentway concept to just show us what could you do at an intersection? Like what could we get done painted in the next year to show that we can improve one of these intersections? And it's the gold one at Reeve Street. And since then we've worked with the Bentway and others like we've worked with everyone, Waterfront Toronto, Downtown West BIA, City Place Fort York BIA, and we've now painted 4 of the underpass connections. These are all pilots though, because as you know, the Gardener's going to be under construction for a few more years.
Yeah.
But the ultimate goal is to turn that smaller scale pilot project into an advocacy project, because we want the city and the province to maintain a higher standard under the highway, better lighting, hopefully an improved appearance, more encouraging environment to encourage people to walk down to the waterfront under the highway. So we're now hoping that will become a permanent presence. And the Bentway actually has a under corridor improvement plan that they've been working on with the city and now the province.
And there are actually destination places too. Like if you want to go into this area, you're sort of focused on collecting through that beltway, and it could be an identification marker or something like that, right?
Yeah, well, that was actually one of the fun things that came up was you can use this as a wayfinding signage element. So one of my favorites is actually, it's a little bit actually hard to see at first, but when you're walking through the Simcoe underpass south of the Rogers Center, there's actually like signage that has a little arrow that says this way, water, and the other way it says this way, city. And it's a small element, but it was just a fairly obvious thing to add once the designers got into it.
Well, it could also be like, okay, these are all the places where I can go if I pass through this area, and so on and so forth. So it could be a good way for mapping your day out. And parking could be say like, look, I'm going to park close to here so that I can get to the waterfront, and these are the places where I want to visit today, because I guess it's at some point it's going to be even more diverse, more exciting, more entertainment across that whole length of strip, and it's people want to be able to go to those, pinpoint some of those places where they want to visit on any particular day. Because one thing I noticed is that when I went, we've gone to Harbourfront millions of times, and parking, like if you're driving into the city, it's insane. Like, let's be honest, it's very, very difficult to navigate in the Harbourfront and the waterfront and get there. Find parking. So I ended up parking at the Westin, went for a drink in there and did valet parking. And then I took off for the rest of the day and came back. And that was my way of, good, it wasn't free parking, but it was like a good idea for me because I had a drink and then I started walking around. It was a very convenient parking spot for me. So, but what is that? So for drivers who are trying to get to the waterfront, how do you accommodate that?
It's funny. We get asked this a lot, like especially if we go on TV or radio, they always talk about how to drive downtown. And my first thing is to discourage people from driving and remind them that the waterfront's about a 7 minute, 5 to 10 minute walk from Union Station. I mean, that's number one. There's an indoor path connection where you can go above ground from Union Station and get right to Queens Quay. But on the parking front, I think one of the challenges that we've kind of been identifying and trying to have some new positions on is there's actually in most of the waterfront, there's actually more parking than back when there was surface parking lots. Problem is people can't see it. People are still used to seeing parking lots all over when they drive to Toronto or drive downtown, but they've all been replaced by larger parking lots that are underground. So they may not be cheap to park in, but there is usually a lot of parking available, except in some places south of the Rogers Centre, there's a bit of a risk of not having enough parking when the city turns that parking lot, that surface parking lot that's still the only one in our neighborhood. Once that gets turned into a park, that'll be a bit of a challenge. That's why we've been advocating for them to keep the parking and put a park on top of it. But yeah, I think that signage with parking is a big problem. There's different parking operators, and the city bylaws don't particularly allow particularly loud, helpful parking signage. So some people drive around where there's 200 parking spots underground right beside where they are, and they actually just don't even see the signs.
Yeah, for sure.
So it is a challenge. I think that I know we're working with the city. I can't promise anything, but we are trying to just get them to do some pilot projects to just have more signage literally saying parking that way.
How about getting an app for people who want to visit the harborfront, and then it tells you everything, maps out everything where you want to go, all the destination places, including parking, hotels, all that kind of stuff. Have you thought about that?
I grimace because this was one of the more ambitious suggestions in the parking study we did a couple of years ago. But
not just for parking. I mean, it's for everything.
I know.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, I think the BIA perspective on apps is don't do them for your neighborhood, because there's already apps people use. Like, unless you can, basically, it's much more important to try and improve the parking on Google Maps or Apple Maps than it is to try and actually create a separate app. I know other cities have done parking apps, but it's usually where the city takes the lead and gets everybody onto it. Whereas with different operators down here, we've unfortunately never seen any pickup for interest of that.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, so tell us a little bit about what the new and exciting things are at Toronto Waterfront these days, some of the new projects. I mean, we can sit here probably for 2 hours talking about that. But we'd like to hear from a development perspective and construction perspective. We want to hear about all the exciting projects and future projects that are coming down the pipeline. And I'm sure you can spend a lot of time on this. So let's hear a little bit about it.
Yeah, I'm probably not. It's funny because it's spring, I want to talk about events and things, but maybe you'll let me plug the events later. But in terms of development and excitement right now, I think that you just did a podcast. I actually listened to your podcast a few weeks ago because you had One Young Anson from Pinnacle
he's on
Canada, basically.
He's one of the.
So that's one of the most exciting things on the waterfront right now is watching. It's already, I think, the tallest building along Queens Quay, where it is right now. So there is just more construction coming. Another thing is things like Love Park opened. Have you ever been down and seen the city built this new park with a heart-shaped pond? It's beside my office building. It's actually like at the bottom of York Street on Queens Quay.
Yeah, Tim.
That generated a lot of excitement. And we were able to put out like unlocked furniture in a park for the first time. And I'm proud to say it's been out there for now 2 summers, and all of the furniture is still
This is York and Queens Quay, right? York?
Yeah, Love Park. Yeah.
Yeah, right by the RBC water place there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great
so other
place.
things are exciting. Well, back to One Young, I mean, there's actually another hotel. One thing we're excited about is, I mean, development has obviously slowed a little bit in terms of condominiums and offices since the pandemic. But one sign of growth in the waterfront is there's probably 4 locations where we'll see either expansions of hotels or additional hotels along Queens Quay, which is obviously much needed. I think that the city could use more hotel capacity as well. And there should be one in place within a year at One Young. Le Meridian brand is going to be in that development.
Yeah, right.
In terms of other things in the waterfront, I feel like I'm not mentioning enough, but there's 2 tall timber buildings right now that are already built. One of them's not open publicly. George Brown College has this new campus building down here on the waterfront called Limberlost.
Yeah, that's
it's actually opening, I think, this month because they have a World Congress of 10,000 people from universities and colleges around the world coming. So they're going to be showcasing that new building. And then the Hines T3 Bayside building, where Waterfront Toronto now has their headquarters down almost at Parliament. Like, those are 2 of the largest tall timber buildings in Canada, if not the 2 tallest. So I find that just walking around looking at the new buildings, if people haven't been to the waterfront or Queens Quay in even the last 3 years, go for a walk east and you will just see a tremendous number of new buildings.
I will.
I don't know how
Actually, I'm
specific you
looking
want
for
to get
something
into.
to do on my birthday, and I think I'm going to go hit the waterfront. So
Yeah, or take a bike. It's even easier now. The
that's
bike lane is
that's
probably
Mike's.
also
That's Mike's.
Yeah, that's my department.
Yeah, that's his department.
that's Mike's department.
I
Yeah.
drive.
Well,
I drive.
yeah, I always forget. We're so used to it because I walk along it or bike along it almost every day. But the bike path along Queens Quay is probably amongst the best in Canada, if not the best.
No, it is quite
Makes
nice.
it very easy to wander along the waterfront.
So what's happening in the islands? Because that's an exciting place. It's is there anything new and exciting happening in the islands?
Well, the thing that's been getting press in the last few weeks is that, I mean, I think pretty much everyone knows that the ferries are going to be starting to be replaced in 2 years with electric ferries that can carry even more people over.
Mm-hmm.
The water taxi industry has grown significantly, especially last year. Unfortunately, a couple of the ferries were down for certain busy weekends. So the water taxis actually did 22% more business last year than they ever have. So that's been one of the really positive signs where visitation has actually been higher since the pandemic than before the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
is people going over to the islands by the ferry and water taxis. We think the numbers are actually higher than ever. So that's a positive. I mean, the islands are, I mean, Centerville is of course there with their petting zoo. I mean, there's a new business that opened up at Ward's Island that's actually renting those tandem bikes. Do you and Mike
Mm-hmm.
want to go on a bike together?
Yeah,
You can.
let's do it, Nick.
The
Let's do
front
it for
and
your
back.
birthday.
You can do
So
all the
I've been
cycling.
joking that's where we're going to see an increase in Instagram photos. It's people renting those tandem
cool.
bikes. I feel like every time someone rides one, I'm going to see it online. And then there's, of
Victoria
course, the more-
Victoria has a lot of water taxis over there. It was I went on my honeymoon out in Victoria and Banff and all that kind of stuff, and we saw a ton of those water taxis. They actually do a musical show with the water taxis as well. They zoom around and do some cool musical kind of event, and it was pretty cool. So are we seeing more water taxis in Toronto?
Yeah, we definitely are. And actually, now that I think about it, I should be mentioning that like the city this week at council, it's been getting a lot of press that they're going to create a task force to consider alternative ways to get people to the islands, whether it be a fixed bridge or a gondola even is being
Sounds
proposed
exciting.
that would go from the Portlands towards Island. But we're supportive of exploring exciting options like that. But we have been quite clear that we think the most realistic option is improved marine transit. The city, Waterfront Toronto and Ports Toronto do have a marine use strategy that outlines more locations to have places where boats and smaller ferries could dock. Because I think the large ferries go to the same 3 places on the islands, but unfortunately, the water taxis also only go to those same 3 locations right now. But I think you'll see a change in the next year. We know that Waterfront Toronto is now opening up new parks already in July in the new Portlands, and so I know it's going to be a priority to get docks and piers there, so that could be an additional pickup drop-off point for at least the water taxis for now. And we also think that a sign of significant growth for the waterfront and the health of a healthy economy down here overall will be if you see water taxis investing in larger boats, what you're, I think, calling sea buses. Like basically, once the companies start carrying more people per trip, that's probably the future of marine transit that's actually going to get the most people around. I think the large ferries will stay
People
large,
don't want to go on
but-
a big ferry, and they don't want to wait, and so on demand they can go and take that water taxi across.
But if I may jump in as a cyclist who loves biking, Martin Goodman Trail to Queens Quay, and I'll go to Sugar Beach, and GLB Brew Pub is right there at Jarvis and Queens Quay. I'm there all the time. I would love, and I understand your focus, but I would love to be able to bike to the island. Like, this is a long time dream I've had. So if they are exploring a bridge of some kind from the Portlands to Ward's Island, you got my vote.
Well, that means something.
Is that right?
Does that mean anything, Tim? Please be honest.
I think I don't want to disappoint everybody, but I don't think that I don't think that there will be a fixed link to the islands. I think that, in a sense, I mean, obviously we want to keep the islands affordable to get to. I think it's a little under $9 to take the ferry across, but I don't believe that a fixed option for bikes to get across is likely. I think that I was listening to concerns
Too many
at
environmental
council.
studies, and
They want to make sure it stays a little bit private too, right? Like, I mean, the islands is busy enough on those warm weather weekends and everything. And a part of it is a residential neighborhood, which we have to be respectful of too. So I really do think it's always going to be a bit of a paid experience, but hopefully always remains a very affordable experience.
Well, we were hoping that you might say it might turn into a Dubai Island or something like that, Palm Island.
Well,
Not
that's
not going to happen, eh?
fun fact. I mean, I was actually just in Dubai about a month ago, and I was actually probably most impressed by the Palm Islands of anything that I went to see.
Oh, nice.
But we in a way we do have that. It's called the Leslie Street Spit, where for free you can bike 7 kilometers out to the end of it. That's a little bit east of my neighborhood, so I usually don't talk about it. But that's actually one of the even more hidden gems as opposed to the Islands, which is a very well-known gem.
Yeah.
But the I always call it the Leslie Street Spit because my grandfather used to go and dump construction bricks
that's what
there
they used to
when
do,
they
the
were
Leslie-
still doing the
Leslie
landfill.
Spit.
It's now Tommy Thompson Park.
Yeah.
And that's Mike, I know you've been there, but I
Yeah,
guess
I've
that's
been.
why
I
I've
feel
seen
like
it.
they close it during weekdays. Like I feel like that park's only open on weekends and evenings. I feel like it's.
Really?
I feel like yeah. I feel like I've. I feel like anyways. It's not open all the time. I think, but absolutely, I've been there. I love going east because I'm a West End guy, and it's like you're discovering a whole new world. You know, it's
Somewhere you've never been
yeah.
before.
It's like you're a tourist in your own city.
Well,
Think
I
about
would.
biking through the Portlands now,
Yeah.
and they now call Villiers Island the Bidazige Island in Oquaman, or Bidazige Park in Oquaman, Minising, and now has an indigenous name.
Right.
But if you've driven through there, I actually don't even know my way around anymore because it changed so much. With
But
the
those
construction.
bridges, those new bridges are really nice. The new bridges that they've
Yeah, they're
installed.
beautiful.
So what about
Shout out to
some?
Waterfront.
Is there any possibility of like hotels being in that area or some sort of development along in the island area, or is that
Dude,
never
not
going to happen?
not the Toronto Islands. I don't think you'll see significant commercial development ever there. I mean,
Yeah.
aside from the island airport, which I guess is separate on the west end. But if we're talking about the Portlands, I've actually never considered that's actually east of the Waterfront BIA. There aren't a lot
Right.
of businesses there yet. I've actually never considered that, but there will definitely be a commercial component there. That's a good question for me to ask people is, do they expect there will be hotels
Yeah.
there?
You should expand
'Cause
over
it'll
there
be-
too.
Like what's really interesting already about that new island, Oquaman Minising, at the bottom of the Don River, is I think as early as later this year, you'll be able to canoe and kayak through these new, I guess, ravines they've created, because they've basically created all around the new island is effectively a public park.
Right.
It's also going to have an art trail eventually. That'll be there next year. But yeah, it's a pretty exciting recreation opportunity, and it's massive. Like it's hard to comprehend the scale. Like this Oquaman Minising, formerly called Villiers Island, is
Yeah.
only the start of the Portlands. I mean, I think the city projections effectively say there's going to be 150,000 more residents in the eastern waterfront, which still has a bit of room to grow, but mostly through the Portlands, going down Commissioners Road. It's just unbelievably massive. What's still to come there?
Super exciting. So now we're going to get onto your favorite subject, and we'll get you to plug all your events and everything like that. So let's hear about Ontario Place, because that's a very hot topic right now, and people want to
Yeah, I
know
got
more
nervous
about
to
it, and then I'm going
mention
to give you my opinion. So,
Tim's sweating. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, tell me your opinion first. I'm interested.
well, I think putting a spa there is the worst idea that anyone has thought of.
Not supportive. Oh, okay.
I'm not supportive of it at all. No.
Well, I think
Because first of all,
it's
Ontario Place is a landmark. We've all been there. We've done major activities there. We've been to concerts there. Children, when I was a young lad, I used to go to Ontario Place often, and it was a cool place to visit for the day and enjoy yourself. Now, it could be so much more. I'm not sure what the spa idea is all about, and I'd like to hear more about it. But I don't think a spa is a great idea, in my opinion.
Well, I think I do get this question a lot. So I do, but we actually don't. It's outside of the BIA's jurisdiction. I mean, in terms of being west, but of course we talk about the broader waterfront a lot too. Like our goal is to have our central waterfront really well connected as an experience to the rest of the waterfront.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our lens on Ontario Place and Exhibition Place. I think the one thing that's not really clear, I mean, obviously, one portion of the Ontario Place redevelopment is getting a lot of the attention. But it's effectively they're adding, like the park is still there, the Trillium Park,
Yeah.
which is great. Like that's fairly new. Like that was only developed 10, 15 years ago. It's beautiful. Like that's not going anywhere. So I think, and the other three things are effectively either expanding or new four-season destinations. So that's where I think the business community is quite supportive, because I mean, we actually don't have a lot of four-season destinations on the waterfront. Harbourfront Center, of course, I guess for a skating rink and thing, is still quite busy on in the winter. But you're effectively going to have the water park / spa is going to be open 4 seasons a year. Of course, the Science Center moving down there would be open 4 seasons a year, of course. And also the current Budweiser stage, Live Nation plans to expand that to have the ability to enclose it and have it active
indoor, outdoor
in the winter as well. So to be quite honest, I mean, without having an opinion on yes or no to any of these, our Waterfront BIA perspective is we certainly would like to see more 4-season destinations. We want it to be successful, but most importantly, we want to make sure it's connected with transit and bike lanes and signage to the bigger waterfront experience. I don't know if you want to get into the nitty gritty of talking about wayfinding signage, but that's something we talk about a lot, which is that the waterfront, this is the kind of the fun part of my job is we get to have these conversations at a really small granular level. Like there should be a sign here pointing this way, but we also get into these broader conversations about what the waterfront should be marketed as in the future. And there's a bit of worry that if Ontario Place, and especially once Exhibition Place has significant redevelopment plans too, like that's going to be a major hub of activity. And we want to make sure that our waterfront is seen as multiple major hubs of activity. The Harbourfront Center and the ferry terminal is already a major hub. The eastern waterfront, basically from Distillery District down through the Quayside development with Waterfront Toronto and into these new parks in the Portlands, is likely going to be a very major hub as well of activity. And so as a gap filling organization, we're very, very focused on like what can be done in the middle zones between those and to make sure that they're all marketed and promoted and kind of developed together in the future. Because if you let me talk about this a little bit more, this is sort of a big topic for us.
Go ahead, please.
We did a report a year ago with the Board of Trade, who does an annual event about the future of the waterfront that we help sponsor. And the goal of that is to make sure all the waterfront stakeholders are talking together on a regular basis and talking about how it all works together. Because as this report wrote, we had a person from another country write a report about the status of the waterfront. And he said, this actually isn't uncommon, but Toronto has kind of developed a pretty great waterfront already, independently as different entities. Like the Harbourfront Center has been there for 50 years. They're great. Yeah. Waterfront Toronto is doing all these exciting new projects. Ontario Place is a provincial entity. Exhibition Place is another city entity. Oh my God, Toronto Islands. There's all these different great Toronto attractions and destinations on the waterfront, and they've all sort of developed independently. And so what we need to do now is, as a small organization, encourage all of those stakeholders to see themselves as one really big entity. Like if we're going to promote ourselves to the world as a waterfront city, you can see behind me.
Sure.
I mean, this is great for a podcast. I'm pointing to an image.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of vision of the waterfront we're always trying to promote and remind people is that yes, like all these individual entities are great, but the really exciting thing is that we want to start attracting like international visitors to come to Toronto to see this as a waterfront city and go to all of these entities, not just one thing in Ontario Place, not just one thing on the central waterfront.
So how do you do that, and why would people say that Toronto is the place to be for a waterfront destination?
Well, we're all from Toronto, right? I was born in Scarborough, raised in Bowmanville, went to university here. I think another thing this report pointed out, sorry to answer this question in an odd way, but we hired a person who he benchmarks world cities. Yeah. So he compares financial investment, arts and culture, education, quality of life. And he said, in the 30 cities in the world that they consider the kind of main cities to benchmark, Toronto's number 9. Like we are already technically a world-class city, and you see it on a regular basis. Whenever there's a report released about the 10 to 20 best cities in the world, Toronto is almost always somewhere between number 1 and 20. But in Toronto, because we grow up here and we see the cracks in the sidewalk, or we're stuck in the traffic, we of course don't necessarily. We're not trained and like raised to talk about our city as a great city yet. And of course, we still have a lot of room to grow. We could talk. That's a whole other conversation, not for the podcast. But we do have a lot to sell ourselves. And if you allow me one more anecdote, we had a tour here. Whenever I meet people from other cities, I always encourage them, visit Toronto, come see, because I want them to do a boat trip for the waterfront. We want to encourage people to see the Toronto as a waterfront city. So we took 100 people from Minneapolis, St. Paul. They sent a delegation of 100. There was 5 mayors here from all their regional cities. Mm-hmm. They had businesses, arts and culture stakeholders, the government stakeholders. And they were just blown away by Toronto. Quite a few of them told me, Nick, we were doing this boat tour, and multiple people came up and said, "What is that building?" And it was the Pier 27 building. Do you know? I think Architects Alliance.
Architects Alliance did that. Yeah.
They it's the building where it looks like blocks stacked on top of each other.
Yes.
Just east of the ferry terminal, and it has another tower that has like this kind of constructed triangle where the triangle kind of shifts in shape as you go up the building.
Yeah.
And they were like, that is absolutely incredible. And for me, I was like, oh, like my friend lives there. Like, it's just a normal thing.
Normal
But for
thing to
them,
see
they
in
were like,
Toronto.
if that building was in our skyline, that would be like the signature building of the skyline. Whereas Toronto, we're so spoiled with so many tall buildings and so many exciting architectural achievements that we just only talk about the ones we don't like.
No, for sure.
So yeah, I think the waterfront does have a few of those buildings now. Like
Well, we are biased. That's no question about it. And yeah, but in terms of like saying like, okay, I'm going to come to Toronto because I want to see this waterfront. Is that what people are saying right now? And if not, then how do you get them to what is it that we're going to do to transform the waterfront to make it that destination? Is it a bigger, bolder idea or vision? Tell me.
I think that, well, for one thing, it's not done yet. There are still a lot of construction sites. I mean, the Ontario Place revitalization, to get back to that, I mean, that's at least 5 years away from any of those projects being done, right? So it's still quite a ways out. But I think, Nick, we're halfway there. Like if Destination Toronto was here promoting the city to visitors and conferences around the world, I think they would tell you like a quarter or a third of our videos is showing things that are on the waterfront, whether we're thinking of Toronto as a waterfront city or not. There's things I do when you talk to people who have visited Toronto, they'll usually mention things like the Toronto Islands as one of the 3 things they did. But we're also just like, I think we were talking about this a lot recently where like Waterfront Toronto was created in 2000 by all 3 levels of government to basically expedite and support the development of major buildings, new destinations, parks, and a lot of housing on landfill. And so that's what they're the experts at. And that's 25 years into that project. That's probably a 50-year project. Like before the entire Portlands is built out and the entire Queens Quay developments are all done or redeveloped into larger properties in some cases, we're probably about 25 to 30 years into a 50 to 60-year process of developing a waterfront that will be known around the world.
Well, that sounds pretty exciting, actually. And you know what? Actually, that's what I'm going to do on my birthday. I'm going to get out there. I'm going to get to the waterfront. It seems like a cool idea. I'll hit there on the weekend.
It's a great
idea. Tell us any amazing events happening in the near future. Tell us about that. I know you're itching to talk about some of the events of the waterfront, and I'd love to hear more because maybe I'm going to plan my birthday around it.
So this podcast is a success. I can say we brought at least one visitor. Are you bringing family, Nick? Are you bringing any friends?
I'm bringing family and friends for sure.
Oh, I mean, okay. This
can I come, Nick? Can I come?
No.
Mike, you can come another time. I'd love to go for a bike ride.
Well, you know what? You know what? You can cycle. I'll tell you where I'm going to be, and then you cycle by and pretend you act surprised when you see me. Okay.
Okay. Well, if the podcast is going up literally right now, this weekend, the city has the doors open where a lot of public buildings and exciting buildings are open to the public to come in. Waterfront's amazing for that because the Island Airport opens up just on the Saturday, but it's amazing. The kids just love it because they let them climb in some of the equipment and stuff. They also open the Marine Fire Unit. That's one of the funnest places to be because some of the kids will come completely decked out in like their firefighter Halloween costumes. Okay. And the firefighters let them climb on everything. And the Red Path Sugar Refinery actually lets people into, I call it the hangar. They have this massive building filled with raw sugar. They let people go in there, which is also one of my favorite things to do. A bit longer term, the next few weeks. I mean, the Tall Ships Festival is coming the weekend before Canada Day. That's one of the next big events coming up. And then, of course, I have to talk about Harbourfront Centre. They always have something exciting going on, especially in the spring and summer. I mean, they just announced their whole summer calendar online if you want to go see it. But things I would highlight is the Science Centre has one of their temporary exhibits there at Harbourfront Centre, and it's been extended through the whole summer, so you can go to that. The Museum of Toronto has an exhibit right now, right on Queens Quay at the Harbourfront Centre about the history of basketball in Toronto. And then Power Plant Contemporary Art Gallery, if you're into that sort of thing, is also open and free, and their exhibit is available through the entire summer. So I feel like that's a good half a day right there if you wanted to go see those 3 things.
Sounds pretty cool.
And then please check out one of our many waterfront patios.
Oh, well, I'll definitely be doing that for sure. So what is your favorite destination on the waterfront? Is there a hidden gem too?
Oh, wow, good question. I don't think I've been asked that in a long time.
There you go.
My favorite destination right now is to go sit on the patio at Simona Italian Restaurant on the Eastern Waterfront, which I'll be doing at least twice in the next 2 weeks. I also, to be honest, I think working down here in 7 years, I actually have even more respect and admiration for the Toronto Islands. I did my first bike ride through the islands last week just to go chat with some of the businesses that I knew would all be kind of like working up to full speed. And it's just gorgeous too. And near Hanlon's, the more private clothing optional beach, there's actually
Oh my
the
God.
pathway is now painted as the world's longest pride flag. That was a project that we worked on last year. So it's pretty great. I also went to go see how nice it looked after its first winter. I think it's good. I think another year before it needs a touch up of paint.
Awesome, awesome. And in terms of your growing your BIA group, do you feel you're going to hit the Portlands, reach around to the Portlands at some point? Do you think that's an expansion of your group at some point?
Asked about that a lot, but I really don't know. It certainly wouldn't be in the next couple of years. I mean, there's just not a lot of businesses there right now, and some of them will be temporarily moving while there's more construction. I think I honestly don't know, because I think that
We have to see where everything's
the
going to
value of our BIA isn't necessarily in trying to add more territory. I mean, a lot of the major commercial buildings that fund BIAs are already within a BIA downtown. I think, to be honest, the value of the BIA is in us finding ways to be valuable to those bigger stakeholders, help them get funding for projects, help lead more funding to major events and everything. I was just talking to Mike about something I was hoping he'll promote in September for a major event kind of collaboration idea that we're working on. Yeah, so I really don't, I guess maybe not the best answer, but I don't expect the BIA to expand in geography or budget significantly. But I do hope that we'll keep finding those areas where we can add value and make a connection or line up a few sponsors for something.
Now, as a business, is it optional for me to join the BIA, or is it strictly voluntary?
Oh, fun question. Leave this till the end because I'm going to get into minutia here. No, I mean, it's funny because the BIA is, once the businesses agree that a significant majority of them want to start a BIA, it's just an extra tax on their tax bill, but the businesses decide how much it is. So that's why we quite often get asked, well, it's actually a compliment. Sometimes people ask us, can we be a member? And we have to tell them you're already a member. Whether you know it or not, you're paying for this on your tax bill. And that's part of the fun for us, is that we have an annual meeting each year and we need to make sure all our businesses are happy. So like we have a board that represents some large businesses and some very small on-street businesses, some tourism businesses and some kind of insurance firms like the tenants in the big towers. And we also have boat companies and tourism operators. Awesome. And so I think the fun part of the job is kind of always making sure that what we're doing is benefiting at least a few of those groups and making sure all of those groups see value in a few things we do. So, because technically they vote on our budget each year, they can decide how much to budget us.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of amazing opportunities happening in the waterfront, and there's some exciting development projects happening. You opened my eyes a little bit about the spa. What's it going to be called?
Well, the Therma Spa, water park and spa, is what gets a lot of
and
the
it's
attention.
No longer, it's
but
not
I always
called,
have to remind people that's about 1/3 or 1/4 of the Ontario Place area of the waterfront.
Is it still known as Ontario Place, or is it just?
I think so, but that's actually something I've been trying to raise. Is I think that we certainly hope that Ontario Place and Exhibition Place will sort of be better planned and coordinated in the future, because it's just such a massive zone with so many things being added. I almost wonder if this is just me pontificating, but I do wonder if it'll end up with a different name for that sort of major waterfront hub, I think, in the future.
Yeah, well, I don't think it should. People, strong roots Toronto, they want to see those names stay. I certainly want to see the Ontario Place as a destination place. Maybe it's a new Ontario Place, Exhibition Place for sure. That's my own opinion, though. And because I think, we remember our history, our roots, our, upbringing, and these are the places we used to go when we were young. So I think there's definitely a lot of people will probably feel the same way as me. And but there's nothing wrong with improving or changing. That's automatic. So
do you want my 2 cents on this on our way out? Which is that we have such limited waterfront real estate in this city. Like, it's so, even when I go down to, where Tim is there from New Toronto, there's a lot of that, especially in the West End, it's homes on the waterfront. It doesn't belong to the people. Like, there's no public access to the waterfront near here. Like, that's a whole different topic, what I would love to have happen. But why, if it's a private spa, can't you put it I don't know, north of the waterfront, like Exhibition Place or elsewhere? Why do you have to take our valuable waterfront property and give it to a private spa with the sweetheart 99-year lease deal, the taxpayer money? I don't understand why that private spa needs to be on the waterfront. It belongs to us. It should be a park.
That's a good.
Well, I think so. The one thing we did submit
very
a statement on
interesting.
in the early days of Ontario Place Revitalization was that a best practice in city building in pretty much every city is that the waterfront or the river, the actual waterfront or riverfront, maintains a public availability. And so I do believe the Ontario Place does maintain that the park will extend as public entity along the entire edge. I mean, whether some people are happy or not with that is a personal opinion. But I do remember that was one thing we actually submitted feedback on, because I don't think the first drafts did have a public right of way to get all the way around the edge of the Ontario Place.
Which is a sin,
Well,
as far as I'm concerned.
So listen, Ontario Place, we know that it has to change, because I think the current model just
it was neglected.
doesn't do anything. So we need some change, and that's the way you get change, Mike. You give sweetheart deals to developers.
You give Austrian private
because
firms.
it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money on the line for some
Well,
people.
if they can come up with it. Have you been
You
reading
gotta-
the papers, Nick? This might be again, this is Tim, you're off the hook on this one, but this could be a bait and switch. Keep your eye on the prize.
That's my connection there. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, actually, I haven't been following the story as much as you, I'm sure. But
There's a word that rhymes with Bassino, but I won't say it anymore
okay,
about
I'm
that.
not going to say anything. Good. Don't say anything. Well, listen, it was a pleasure and honor to meet you, Tim. I think we've touched on the exciting things happening on the waterfront. I'm going to be there on my birthday. You just got some new guests coming over there. And really exciting to hear from you today, and excited to hear things that are happening on the waterfront. And we certainly want to be a part of that in the near future. So thanks very much. Any final words or anything you'd like to say?
No, just we appreciate people visiting the waterfront. 90% of tourists in Ontario say they're going to stay in Ontario this year. This summer. So we hope they'll come down and visit Queen's Quay.
One more thing, you got to do that. I think the app will be a huge success, because you get that app when you want to come down to Toronto waterfront, and everything is there. Shows you where to park, shows you where to go, shows you where to eat, shows you where to dine, shows you what to see, and it's in one place rather than multiple places where everybody has to research. Anyways, my own opinion.
And thank
Thanks,
you,
no
comment.
Thank you, Mike.
Tim. That was fantastic. I'll meet you at Echo Beach.
Sounds great.
Shout out to Martha
good.
and the Muffins. And thank you for listening to Building Toronto's Skyline, a podcast exploring the current state of Toronto's condominium industry, proudly brought to you by Fusion Corp Developments, Inc. Please like, share, and subscribe. See you again in 2 weeks.